You're watching Morning at NTV.
Welcome back to Morning at NTV. Let's delve directly into a Take Note conversation for the day. The International Labour Organization is celebrating 100 years of advancing social justice and promoting decent work. The organization, which was formed, received, of course, the Nobel Peace Prize in 1969 for improving fraternity and peace among nations, pursuing decent work and justice for workers, and providing technical assistance to other developing nations. Now, 50 years later, to mark the organization's centenary, it convened a global commission, of course, on the future of work, whose report published in January 2019 made 10 recommendations for governments to meet the unprecedented challenges of a changing world of work. Now, those included a universal labor guarantee, social protection from birth to old age, and an entitlement to lifelong learning. Now, ahead of its celebration, of course, tomorrow, we want to have a conversation on the future of work and what kind of jobs are available and what is decent work. Do the jobs we send our children, of course, to do in the Middle East qualify as decent work? So joining us this morning to have that conversation, I'm joined by Mr. Apollo Nzomba. Of course, he is the Principal Labor Officer, Industrial Relations at the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. They are also ILO partners right here in the country. Many thanks and welcome to Morning at NTV.
Thank you.
First and foremost, we'd like to say congratulations. Of course, you're partners with ILO, they're making 100 years. What does that mean for this workspace? Not just globally, in Africa and specifically in Uganda?
Yeah, it means that we still have, it brings us down to begin to think of the key areas which formed the background of forming the ILO in 1919. Mm-hmm. And those are issues of social justice and promotion of decent work. And when we talk about decent work, we are looking at work which can give somebody an opportunity to grow. Social protection can also make somebody to be able to realize some earning and support the family. Mm-hmm. So that entails what decent work means. And therefore, what this time when we are going to celebrate, it gives us an opportunity to review, especially for Uganda, since 1963 when we became a member state of ILO up to now, where does the implications for the future of work mean for this country? Mm-hmm. And especially when you look at the growing number of youth and the implications related to migration.
Right. And
also decent employment opportunities. And that does not mean that the migration is not guided by other conventions. Mm-hmm. in all other countries. Mm-hmm. We also have new technologies which are coming in. Of course, those create new jobs for other people.
Right.
But it sends away other category of people as well.
And we'll be getting into that.
So
right.
That is also another area.
That's another area as well. We'll be getting into that. But it's been 63 years.
Since 1963.
Yes, of Ugandans, of course, a partnership, I'll call it that, to the ILO.
Yes.
As, of course, abiding to those particular structures and saying that we have pledged that we'll do everything possible to abide by and to ensure that our people achieve that ideal in terms of social justice and decent work.
Yes.
You're here in Uganda, and I'm happy that you're coming from the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. I want you to be honest with us this morning. Of those ideals, where would you rate us in terms of the 63 years in this membership and what you've been able to achieve? Just critically looking at our reality right here in Uganda.
1963 is not really 63 years.
No. We're looking at 63 years of Uganda.
Okay.
Partnering with the ILO, so to speak. So what have you been able to achieve? Reality on the ground. Be honest with us in terms of achieving social justice and decent work.
To be honest with you, you know, the ILO institution is a tripartite institution which is composed of workers, employers, and government. And all the international labor standards are developed with a consensus of all the tripartite institutions. And these international labor standards have been, the core ones have been ratified and domesticated in our laws. And therefore, if you look at the Employment Act and its regulations, the Occupational Safety and Health Act and its regulations, and then the Workers' Compensation Act, all these laws are aimed at ensuring that the issues related to workers' rights, workers' conditions of work, workers' terms and conditions of work, the health and safety of work, all those are issues of decent work. Because we are looking at the workplace which can make workers work and have their quality of life, their dignity.
Correct.
They are not treated like commodities and so on. Really, those are the framework which we use to enforce. And it's an enabling environment really for government. And we think that this has been a very big achievement for this country. And that's why we have the labor administration system in place. The framework for the labor administration system is generated from the international labor standards.
Okay.
And so that's why we have labor officers, we have the labor administration system, we do inspection, we try people who violate others' rights,
All
we
right.
follow,
and we always say
injured
that,
workers and so on.
Right.
Yes.
We always say that implementation is always the challenge. Just take us through the gaps that you face on ground in terms of enforcing some of this, international labor standards on ground, because you know that I'm sure you interact with different organizations and the workers therein. A majority are disgruntled, and they still say that more has to be done. So, in terms of implementing the ideal and the standards, what would you say are the challenges, implementation challenges that you face on a day-to-day basis?
I think the major challenge I would say is, which we have noticed, is we still need to do more to make people really know their rights,
okay,
which are enlisted in these laws. They are really, where people have known their rights, you see that they come up, they come up to these offices whenever they have violations, they report, others report on behalf of others, and also that is the major area where we need to break in. Otherwise, maybe in terms of capacity to be able to, in terms of staffing, those may be the major challenges. But in terms of the legal framework to ensure decent work,
that
we have not done badly.
Okay, all right.
Though we are also, as time goes, we need to review some of these laws, and we are also undergoing some reviews, but that has been the major challenge.
All right, looking at the reviews, before we move on to just looking at the future of work in Africa and in Uganda, there's been that conversation about a minimum wage bill, and we know that when you describe decent work, the payment, the remuneration factor is critical. Comparing the work, the output vis-a-vis the payment you get out of it. So where is that conversation, and are we likely to see it coming up in 2020, whereby there's some cushioning or protection of Ugandan workers on what they ought to be paid by either local investors or foreign investors, private sector and government alike?
Yeah, the discussion for minimum wage is really, we need to streamline it, because first of all, government is committed to setting a minimum wage, and that's why 2 years ago we had a board which did a study, and they undertook the study and submitted a report. That is the report we are reviewing, and it is supposed to help us to guide on the level of minimum wage you can set, because you have to look at cost of living, you have to look at cost of employment,
Right.
you have to look at many factors. And it is a process which really is detailed and has to get approval of cabinet. So that process has not yet been stopped. And it is not the same as the discussions which are going elsewhere. So there is commitment on the side of government to provide the minimum wage. And also, we also have social dialogue is an important aspect of ILO constituencies, and the labor unions also negotiate better pay and better terms and conditions for their workers. And so the collective bargaining framework also comes in to support where there are no minimum wages.
Okay.
But the minimum wage ideally is supposed to give the lowest minimum pay below which an employee, it's like a guide. It doesn't mean that everyone will be required to pay that people can pay, but as an entry point and for a specific job.
All right.
What should guide setting of a wage? That is
Right.
what we're talking
And I
about.
like what you're saying. There's also need to strengthen the labor unions. And that also touches on sensitizing the workers as well, for them to understand their rights. Let's flip over to the future of work.
Yes.
You've seen the phenomenon in Africa, different countries, including Uganda, whereby 2019 has not been an easy year. And you've seen quite a number of layoffs, retrenchments, redundancies, you know, a majority being declared redundant, that your role is redundant, therefore we are sorry, we can't afford you anymore, we can't keep you here anymore. And that is against, of course, the 2030 vision of ILO of, you know, achieving sustainable development for all. And sustainable development means everyone has to have access to work, and not just work, but quality work. Now, with the AI, artificial intelligence disruptions and all that, how are we going to strike a balance? And on this other side, we're seeing businesses that are saying, the economy is not doing well, we need to cut down on our costs. That means we need to lay off quite a number of people and roles that are rendered redundant. AI is here to replace, of course, with higher efficiency and all that. So with the future looking very blurry, what is ILO doing to ensure that you strike a balance, of course, with partners like yourselves?
Yeah, that's the main reason why these discussions are going on. As social partners, as the tripartite institutions, we need to come up with a way of making a social contract of how some of these challenges, in spite of the changing circumstances of doing business. You see, employers also have to pay taxes. They have to make profit. They have to service costs, and the labor is one of the costs. So the discussions which actually we want to now make in tomorrow's function is to see as we go through some of these challenges which are coming in. And we also undertook some employment diagnostic study to analyze our employment creation issues with the investments, so as to come up with strategies of how we can employ better, we can create jobs, and we can increase the number of jobs, and we can reduce unemployment in all the investments.
Okay.
So most of these discussions which are going on with a view of addressing these issues. But one of the things which may need to be done is how to continuously develop the skills, continuous training, capacity building, so that people retain. Changing skills, you have to add another skill.
Right.
Changing technologies, you have to see how. There will always be a way. You see, it's a tripartite institution. It means government has to sit together with the employers and workers and see how.
Okay.
the fate of these workers can be addressed.
Okay, and I love what you're saying.
Including matters of social security.
Yes, social security, but also constant learning, because it's one of the key pillars of ILO.
Yes.
All right. You know, as we wrap this up, my final question to you. The ILO has been, you know, on the forefront of having conversations with regards to promoting the gig economy, whereby we're saying that we need a citizenry or a nation or a world of people who have quality lives. And that means a work-life balance. So the gig economy comes through. So where are you seeing Uganda in the next 5 years with regards to the promotion of the gig economy and its, you know, impact or contribution to the growth of Uganda's economy at large and the quality of life as well, in 1 minute?
Yeah, we still have a lot of things to do. You see, it requires a lot of skills development. It requires a lot of structural changes and putting in place other systems, because every technology which comes in brings in another element which requires an enabling environment.
Correct.
Requires enforcement arm to also change strategies. So really it needs a comprehensive approach which will be addressed in a comprehensive manner from all angles.
Okay.
From employers, workers, and even government side.
All right. Thank you so much for coming through. And I love what you're saying. And the critical thing here is we need to sensitize ourselves and get to understand where the world is going to and how we can take the onus on ourselves as well, as much as government is doing their part, to reskill, relearn, retool, critical.
And that's why we want all of you to come tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
In the afternoon.
All right.
To listen to these discussions, because all of us are part of it and we shall be affected in one way or the other, and we need solutions from all of us to move forward.
Thank you so much, Mr. Apollo Nzomba, the Principal Labor Officer, Industrial Relations at the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. They're also critical partners with the ILO, that's the International Labor Organization. Let me link to Stephen Bide. He's in Mukono with the latest. Stephen, good morning.